After the jolt of the ship leaving the space station, we all were able to get back to our feet, and with less than a minute, we heard the door open, and we finally got a look at what we believed was the thing that had purchased us. But this thing, standing about as tall as a medium sized dog, scurried in on all six of its legs. It was very much insectoid in nature and scurried around left and right, but didn't come talk to us. Instead, no, it simply chittered a little bit. The sensor inside my brain translated, okay, gotta find it, gotta find it, gotta find it, gotta find it, where is 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 it, was all that it was saying, as it scurried up and down the walls, up and around the boxes, and then eventually found a box, removed it, and then scurried back through the door. We all just stood there with our jaws open, going, what the hell was that? Eventually, two or three more came in, but this time, instead of just insectoids that ran across, no, instead there was a few that seemed to be almost, well, how do I put this? Tentacly. I guess you could say technically it was a tentacle type thing going on here, as it had several tentacles hanging off its lower mandibles. Well, I should say mouth, as it didn't have two different mandibles unless it opened up its maw the whole way. And then it had several of these tentacles that hung down the back of its head, and a couple more that kind of hanged off its forward appendages. As I stated before, most of these alien species seem to be humanoid, though this one seemed to walk over toward us with a strange, almost grace to it. It looked almost female, but I couldn't really tell. It still had a strange, almost fish look to it. It seemed as though the tentacles that were attached to its lower limbs, or I guess you could say they were legs, they seemed to move in a way that made the creature, the rest of it, seem as though it was floating as it moved over towards us. In a very delicate voice, it said, "Welcome. Follow me, and I will introduce you to our mistress." We all looked at each other confused, and eventually one of the guys spoke up, said, "What do you mean? Okay, you want to tell us what the fuck is going on already?" "Such vulgar language," she said. "The mistress will not enjoy this. You are best to address her with the utmost respect, or else she will punish you." She motioned toward her neck with one of her tentacles. I realized that even though we were all carrying them, most of us had not actually felt the full burst of these things, and I wasn't exactly thrilled at the idea this thing might actually shock me instead of just, itching or tickling. We followed her as we went through each of the corridors. I kept looking around, trying to make a mental note of where we were. Down each of the corridors, several different species, some of these same tentacle creatures, a few of those insectoids were actually working on panels, bringing stuff back and forth, and then a few others I'm hard-pressed to explain, one or two reptilian-type creatures. But eventually, we got towards another large room. As we got to the doors, the tentacle-y type creatures paused, turned, and looked at us, and stated, "Behind these doors is your new mistress. Be sure to pay her proper respect, or you will be punished. At best, you will be warned. If not, you will be killed. Understand this. As you are new, you, human?" one of the guys said. Yes, human. Strange name. But you will be expected to hold yourself up with a certain level of decorum. If you do not, then I cannot guarantee your safety. Though as if I could guarantee it anyway." With that, she reached over, waved one of her tentacles near some sort of sensor next to the door, and the doors opened not with a slam as most do, but very slow and very quiet, as though not to disturb the one inside. We went inside, and the lights seemed to be down low, and I saw something I was not expecting to see in a ship. There were several candles, of all things. Wouldn't that eat up all the oxygen? Or maybe it's not an oxygen-filled atmosphere? I don't feel any different. I mean, it's still oxygen and nitrogen and stuff like that. What the hell's going on? If anything, I feel a little better. I mean, it seems like the air's kind of thicker here. So what the Seriously, why with the candles? The tentacly creature glided forward, and, Mistress, I have brought your new purchases here. I believe this is sufficient, or do you have other duties for me? We saw something stir, something kind of big, we thought was moving towards us. I couldn't get a good look at it as the lights were down low. And eventually, the lights began to raise just a little bit more, and a little bit more that we could see. And eventually, I looked over, and there it was, some sort of lizard person draped over with some sort of almost sheer type of cloth. It raised its head, looked over, seemed to lick its lips a little bit, and then slowly began to raise itself. As it did, it stood up on its two hind legs, using its tail to help guide it up, not using its forward limbs to aid in this. And then the sheer sheet that had been over it simply fell off to the side, showing that this lizard creature was clearly naked. And with that, many of us averted our eyes. Do I look so horrible to you humans that you would turn away from me? It's a sign of respect and for your modesty, ma'am, sir. It is mistress you will call me. You will call me that from now on, human. There will never be a mistake here, or I will punish you in a way you will never forget. Now, look at me. We all looked towards her, but the girls seemed to actually hide from her. This female, we assume, as we were to address her as mistress, was standing there, a good 7 feet tall, looming over us. However, we found as it stepped forward, it was actually up on a platform. That platform led to what seemed to be a bed, or something. Maybe it was a nest, I couldn't tell at the time. As it stepped down, it come down to the point where I was actually taller than it was. The thing stood maybe 5'9", 5'10". So, why do you fear me, humans? We've never seen anything like you before. Ah, yes, that is correct. You humans are new. Yes, it was worth the price to see you. Now that I see you closer, I see that I may have made a better decision in taking so many of you. She turned and walked over and began to eye each of us one by one, getting a lot closer than we would like. You do not need to fear me so much, human. You only need to fear if you do not serve me with distinction as is required by a slave. With that, I tensed up a little bit more. I hate that word to no end. And with that, one of the young women piped up, I'm no slave to you. What was that, human? She looked over, and the young black girl stood slightly defiant at this lizard. You will obey me, and you will now apologize for your words, or else I will end you. Whatever, bitch, was the last thing she said. The female lizard raised her arm as quickly as anything and reached across the human's neck. The young girl didn't even realize what was happening as the blood sprayed across the room. She dropped down, gurgling. I reached over trying to cover up the wound, but I could see it was already too late. The claws had cut into her neck, just deep enough that the carotid artery had been cut, Not fully severed, but with every single pulse of her heart, the blood spurted out. I covered it up, and I squeezed as tight as I could to try and make the bleeding stop. So, human, you are a healer, I see. That will be useful. I shot that lizard bitch a look, and I looked back down, and unfortunately, the one I was trying to protect, the one I was trying to save, faded off. It was almost like she went to sleep right there. But I could feel from the pulsing that the blood slowly pulsed less and less and less until there was no more pulses going out through my fingers. Reaching down, I looked and closed her eyes with my other hand. What an interesting display. You humans are, of course, unique, and you are new. It will be interesting to figure out what you all are capable of. She motioned to the tentacle creature, and the tentacle creature came up. Follow me now. As she turned and kind of glided away, I stood up. I didn't know what to do, so I picked up the young girl and I took her with us. Eventually, we ended back up towards the cargo bay. I recognized some of the areas we had passed. With that, we were able to set her body down, but then we were ushered out of the area. I didn't realize at the time, but we were in an airlock. As soon as we left, the tentacle creature again waved a tentacle across, sealed the door, and with a few seconds, the door on the outside opened and the body was sucked into space. Then the outer door shut, and another blue light turned on. This must have signified things were good. I guess blue and green is their version of red and green. Regardless of that, I looked down at my hands, were still moist with the blood, and I had to wipe them off on my trousers, at least what was left of my trousers. The tentacle thing motioned for us to follow, and then follow me, as she led us down to what we found would be our quarters. You must stay here until called. One of the other guys said, well, what do we eat? I'm starving over here. Yes. One moment. The tentacle creature walked out and then came back with a small device. Inside the small device, as we waved our hands around in front of it, small pellets came out. Small pellets about the size of a supplement, that is. These pellets were expected to be our food. It smelled and probably tasted like rabbit pellets. It was disgusting. Well, what about water? She motioned towards what looked like a sink. We found out really quick that that was their version of a water fountain. Ugh, this is gonna suck so bad. We got stuck in that one room for a long time. Eventually, the other two girls started breaking down crying as they finally realized the full extent of the situation they were in, thinking about the one that had just had her neck sliced open. I wondered how in the hell she was able to get her claws past that collar, but then again, I didn't know much about what was going on. Me and one of the other men started comparing notes about what we had seen, and we tried to figure out the lay of the ship that we were in. Unfortunately, we didn't have much to go on. Eventually, we wager about 2 days later, the doors opened and the tentacle creature again walked in. All of you, come. And she walked away. As nice as her voice sounded in my head, I really wanted to slap that bitch every time she talked. Eventually, we walked out. A bunch of us, we realized as soon as we hit the fresh air, we had been getting kind of ripe, all stuck in that room. No place to actually do our business, so we kind of had to improvise. Don't ask. Eventually, We realized that the ship must have been docking, as we were suddenly shocked to one side and then another, as it seemed to be connecting with another ship. Eventually, we ended up being led to the same area we were led into the first day, that strange cargo bay. But this time, it had been hollowed out. All the boxes were gone, the last of them being brought out by those bug creatures, still scurrying about going, we gotta hurry, we gotta hurry, we gotta hurry, we gotta hurry. Now that's this box goes here, this box goes here. Ooh, this box, oh, where does this go? This box goes over here. It was all we could hear from the chittering that there was going on. These things must have been slaves as well. I didn't see collars on them, but the way they talked, I didn't think they were all too smart. We followed the tentacle creature all the way out, and eventually she motioned, and there was the lizard mistress. To each of her side was two very, very large canine-looking creatures. We kind of laughed. I was like, oh, great, guard dogs. Here, boy, was all I wanted to say, but I kept my voice down. The mistress simply waved and gave us a sort of come here motion. Eventually, we walked over. You will now prove your worth. Since I am down one of you humans, you will now show the rest of the universe that you are worth what I spent for you. We looked over and we couldn't figure out what was going on, but it was pretty clear we had docked with another space station. As we entered the hallway, we could feel the difference in air, difference in gravity. We continued to walk about as we ended up into a small containment area. But right next to that containment area was places to sit and or perch. We saw different alien species there, all of them with collars on. We knew something was up, something was wrong. And then I looked over and I saw the door. The door on the far side was grated. We were in some sort of holding area for arenas. We could hear crowds outside. Eventually, me and the other guys walked up to that doorway and looked out, and of course we could see we were in some sort of coliseum, but the way the coliseum was set up was just odd. It was as though the whole thing wrapped around in a giant bubble. There wasn't a single part of the ceiling, except for where the lights were, that wasn't filled with seats. It was strange. What the hell type of gravity field have they got going here? This was strange. We couldn't figure it out. We continued to talk to each other about what the hell was going on. Then we heard another booming voice. It must have been coming from some sort of PA system. Good evening all, and welcome to the opening games. We appreciate you all coming, and we hope you have a wonderful time. Please feel free to place your bets at any time, as we have new species that will be fighting for your entertainment today. We have a new species now called human. Yes, I know, it is funny. It is delightful to say the word human. Oh, that is so funny that they call themselves excrement. Oh, it is delightful. Before we bring the humans out, we start with our few exhibition matches. Everything is in your pamphlet. Your schedules are in front of you. Again, feel free to place your bets at any time. And as for right now, we have a special treat for you. A Ragnar versus a Katan. Feel free to place your bets, as these two creatures are very evenly matched and will set the stage for all the fun to come today. Now, let the show begin! And with that, we could see that a couple of the doors were opening up, and sure enough, creatures came out. One of them looked almost like a scorpion without claws, and the other one, what the hell was that? Seriously, it looked like a cross between a badger and a crocodile. Seriously, what am I looking at? As the creatures went at each other, these two things, barely the size of a medium-sized dog, just started thrashing and spiking at each other, snapping at each other, went at each other with sheer voracity, which was pretty clearly that they had both been starved and they were both looking for a meal. This was confirmed as the one that looked like a badger clamped on to the insectoid one and eventually got the stinger right through the back of its head. This didn't kill it, but it sure seemed to make it yelp as it let go and both of them went backwards. The insectoid one realized that a couple of its legs had been damaged and it wasn't going to be thrashing around much. However, you could see that whatever toxin had gone into that badger thingy was trying to fight it off. I'm sure within a few inches or maybe a few centimeters of its brainstem. As it seemed to wobble over, the badger-looking thing jumped up, grabbed the tail, and began to thrash and thrash and thrash, whipping it back and forth just like a dog would thrash its favorite toy whenever it wanted to tear it apart. And then eventually the tail snapped off, and that dog creature simply ate it. It ate it all the way up to the stinger, and then using its powerful jaws, bit, and the little bit of stinger was left was sitting there pulsating on the ground. Eventually, it started to go over towards that insectoid creature again, the insectoid creature trying to use its remaining functioning legs to back away as it didn't have much to fight with except for its one working forward appendage. But as the badger, dog, crocodile, whatever the fuck it was, went in, it just dropped. Apparently, the venom had finally taken effect, and it had dropped off, and it had either fallen asleep or it was dead. The crowd was in a frenzy as the announcer came up, and there we have it, the winner! Of course, there was a mixture of cheers and boos, as obviously people had been betting on each one. And now, on to our first match. We have a Catan versus a human. And with that, as we turned around, we could see several of the guards coming at us with those tickle sticks, as I like to call them, looking at the man next to me. I was like, oh, dude, I think they want you to fight. Against a what the? Seriously? What? How backwards are these spacefaring races? Eventually, we could see that they were not kidding. The guards were lining up 2, 3, 4 at a time, row after row after row, with these tickle sticks at the ready. Eventually, we could hear the sound of the gates opening up on the other side. We turned and looked, and their idea of a Ragnar, whatever the fuck that was, looked like some sort of funky kangaroo hybrid. Like mix a kangaroo with an emu and you might be about there. I'm like, what the hell they do? Rip off Australia. With that, as we spun around, those with the tickle sticks threw a couple different weapons towards the guy next to me. Seriously, dude, it looks like they want you to fight. I don't want to fight that thing. Then they charged with the tickle sticks and they jabbed him. He started laughing so hard he almost pissed himself. Eventually, he grabbed one of the tickle sticks out of the guy's hand and then whacked him over the face with it. At that point, the gate began to open up, and I began to look over at this kangaroo bird doohickey as it seemed to be getting ready to prance its way over. Prance? Hop? What? I honestly, I have trouble seeing how each one of those is different at this point. And eventually, you could see the young man. He looked at me and said, you know what? Fuck it. I got this. He grabbed a hold of two of the guards by the neck and dragged them out, being jabbed by tickle sticks the entire time. And he was going to use them as weapons. He walked out as these guards were scratching at his arms, trying to get him to let go. He walked up towards this kangaroo bird thingy, and it seemed to be confused. It kept bobbing its head sideways, left and right. Oddly enough, just looking at it. What the hell is it? Why? What the? It didn't understand. Eventually, he picked up one of these things and threw it at this kangaroo bird. The kangaroo bird came up with its hind legs and gouged into this thing. The claws, to the crowd's pleasure, dug straight into the Xeno's side and gashed him open, and I watched as his innards became his outers. It screamed as this kangaroo bird thing reached in, didn't quite peck, but jabbed down with as much speed, and then seemed to be grinding its head as it ripped out its liver or heart or something. But that Xeno just stopped moving. And with that, the other guard was thrashing and screaming. I could hear him begging for help. The guy just looked at him and said, "What? You wanted to fight, dumbass?" And then proceeded to use that Xeno as a club and began to whack and swing at this birdaroo or whatever you want to call it. This thing did not understand what was going on. It would try to reach out and grab a hold of the leg of this Xeno that was being whipped around, thinking, "Oh, he's trying to feed me." Oh, wait, whack, being hit on the side of the head. Then it would try again, whack, and get hit again, and then whack back and forth and back and forth. The birdaroo thing just kept backing up more and more. Couldn't figure out what the hell was going on. Back and forth and back and forth. The whole time the guard's legs are getting tore up. He's still screaming in pain and in fear as whack, whack, whack. Eventually the bird kangaroo thing started to stagger, and with one simple stroke, he swung around, hit it, and let go of the guard at the same time. The weight of the guard wrapped around this birdaroo's neck, and down it went. He simply walked up as the birdaroo was trying to get its head out from underneath the Xeno, raised his foot, and slammed it down on this bird kangaroo thing's neck, right towards the base, towards the torso. There was an audible crunch as the entire arena was silent. They could not believe what they were seeing. I looked at him and I couldn't stop laughing. I'm like, "Seriously, dude? Seriously?" He simply looked at this thing, realized he'd killed it, turned and walked away. No fanfare, no speeches, no nothing, but simply walked back. And as he passed by, I gave him a high five. "Nice work, man." The crowd was still in shock as the gates closed, and eventually they had another exhibition match with more. But this time, after about 3 or 4 matches, what we saw made us incredibly angry. The announcer, "Well, since we had some trouble with the humans, and the humans seem to be a bit stronger than we give them credit for, it's time for us to bring up a little bit more of a challenge. Here's a Krentar." The doors began to open, and I'm guessing bovine? It did have horns like a cow, but it didn't quite have the body of a cow. No, it was strange. It was like 8 legs on this thing. Almost spider-like, but not quite there. But it still gave this strange screech as it came out, as though it was trying to assert dominance. What the hell was this? I looked over, and sure enough, it had one of those weird control collars on it. Oh, crap. "Well, since we had one human take out its own prey so easily by taking out the guards, we figured we'd give this lovely beast here a little bit of a handicap. It's only going to be facing 3 humans instead of the original 12 it was going to be facing. However, we're going to give it a further handicap so we can all see if these humans are as tough as we think." The gates opened on the far side, and we began to look, and in sheer, absolute horror, the guards started pushing out 3 females. I'm guessing ages from 25 to maybe 40. And I stress the maybe part on that. After they did their adjustments on us, we all seemed to look kind of young. But still, what in the ever-loving shit? We saw this and we're like, "Oh, hell no." And we're not the only ones. What we didn't realize is there was other humans all around, and we could hear them all screaming. It wasn't just us. "You motherless bastards, what are you doing? You cocksuck son of a bitch! I'm gonna kill you, you bastard!" Well, it seems if we riled up the rest of the humans. Let's see if these ones in the arena can really hold themselves. However, we're not going to have them in shackles the whole time. No, no. They can use those as weapons if they wish. They seem to use other sentients as weapons, so let's see what they do with non-sentient weapons. With that, we saw that their bindings had snapped open. Apparently, some sort of radio control had released them, and the chains dropped to the ground. The girls immediately got up and began to run back to the gate, but the gate had shut in the meantime. And then this bull-headed spider... Oh, what is with these freaking hybrids out here in space? I don't know what I'm looking at, but this thing looked like it was ready to take them down. But the worst thing they did was run away from it, because apparently that turned on some sort of switch. Just like you don't run away from a wolf, because they will chase you and they will try to kill you. This thing began to charge. And before the girls even realized what had happened, this thing had gotten really close to the point where the horns had slashed into one of them, and she went flying up in the air and landed with a horrible thud. I was up against the side, and I saw the two men with me. I looked at them. I looked at this gate. I grabbed it, and I looked and said, "Help me with this." And with that, we all grabbed the gate, and we began to pull up as hard as we could. With everything we had, we began to move it. It fought us. The mechanism itself whined against us, but it was more designed to push it down than to actually hold it down. And we were able to lift it slightly more and more and more until we got it up to about chest level. And to our surprise, we realized that more humans had done this. We were not going to let our own be slaughtered like this. In the meantime, the one girl who had been hit was on the ground bleeding. She couldn't move, but this thing, this bull spider thing, didn't seem to give a shit. It was too busy chasing the other ones. Almost like rodeo clowns, the two ran across the area, trying desperately to try and call this thing from one area to the other, trying to get it to wear itself out, but it didn't seem to be running out of steam anytime soon. We finally got the gate up above chest level, and as we were about to go through, we saw several other humans run into the arena full bore towards this thing that was trying to kill ours. This spider bull thing was just confused. "Oh, look at this, ladies and gentlemen. The humans have decided on their own fate. They're going to be facing down one of the most feared animals in the known universe. Let's see how many. Place your bets on how many are going to die before this whole confrontation is over." With that, the crowd began to cheer more and more and more, and finally we got the gate up high enough. And I said, "Go through, both of you, go through." They ducked underneath, and before I realized it, all the rest of the humans that were with us ducked under as well, and we were all in the arena. I switched myself to the other side and let the gate fall behind me, and now we're all in the arena, and now it's fucking party time, asshole. And with that, we all rushed the creature, many of us grabbing the legs and trying to pull them out. However, this thing was pretty damn heavy. No matter how strong we are, this thing must have weighed probably 2 tons. But still, the fact that they had several hundred pounds of just one of us, and then when 2 or 3 were on each leg, this thing began to thrash around trying to kick us off, not really caring about actually crushing any of us. It just wanted us to let go. During this whole melee, I ran over to see if the girl was okay. She was alive. The wounds weren't nearly as deep as I thought, but she had taken one hell of a hit. I'm guessing she had a concussion at least, because she was groggy as all hell. She couldn't even tell me her name, but I didn't care. I just picked her up and I ran her off to the side, handed her off to a couple of the other females and said, "Take care of her," and then ran out to help with the other guys to take this thing down. While I was doing that, apparently somebody had the great idea of grabbing the chains that were left behind and getting up to the side, and eventually threw it over top. The chains had wrapped around this thing's neck as it continued to thrash its head sideways, trying to get its horns onto anything it could to try and get any type of damage on us. It began to scream, not in agony, but in fear, as the chain wrapped around just enough to actually lock itself into place. The bindings, the cuffs themselves had looped around the chain and now would not let it come loose. As many men tried to hold on to that chain, this creature simply bucked itself up, and suddenly our guys were airborne. Without our knowledge, somebody else had jumped onto its back. I grabbed onto its tail and tried to find any type of weak spot I could. The carapace of this thing was rather squishy, surprisingly. Almost like that of a caterpillar, of all things. However, as I got on, I began to strike at it. It did not seem to like being punched in the butt, but hey, as long as I could keep this thing busy. But next thing I knew, this thing started thrashing up and down, making a waving motion almost. I looked up and I could see one guy had reached up to the head and grabbed a hold of the chain and locked its heels around this thing's neck. And as it bucked, I let go because I was starting to crack up too hard because all I could hear is yee-haw, yee-haw, yee-haw. Oh, son of a bitch, do you guys not have so much fun during a battle? But oh man, that was funny. Holy shit. I started laughing, a whole bunch of everybody. We all backed away, and he just went going and let this thing thrash and jump around. We thought for a second the thing might get smart and roll onto its back until we realized that its legs were just a little too stumpy. If it rolled onto its back, it wouldn't be able to get back up. Plus, it would be exposing its underbelly. Oh man, this was a genius move. I don't know if he thought it was a good idea at first or he thought this was just going to be fun. But eventually, the creature simply ran itself out of energy. And it slowly just calmed down and just slumped down to the ground, breathing heavy. The guy eventually got off, unhooked the chain, dropped it off the other side, and the crowd was completely going absolutely nuts at the idea that we had just subdued one of the most dangerous creatures that had ever been known. Well, what a turnabout, ladies and gentlemen. Only one human injured. I hope that's what you bet because the odds for that were 20,000 to 1. Whoa, how many do we have here? Oh, we have 2 people. Oh, two. 2 of you. Congratulations. You have just won almost all the winnings that everybody put in. Now that the humans are out here, oh, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for our main event. With that, all of us suddenly clenched. Oh, crap. Now what? With that, we saw several gates open. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Our main event is going to be taking place now. Since the humans have shown that they are not only intelligent, but they're also strong, we are simply going to let every single one of our creatures out. And with this, it is going to be a total battle royale. Place your bets on how many humans will survive, if any. The battle starts now. And with that, we realized what is going on. Oh, crap. Several of those sting creatures were there. There were some of those badger dog things, crocodile, whatever the hell you want to call it. The bull bug thing was still exhausted on the ground. It couldn't move as several other creatures just ran up and started chomping on it, stabbing it, sticking it, all sorts of clawing on it. As long as they were more concerned with it than they were concerned with us, we didn't really give a shit. At that point, the guy who had grabbed the chain out from underneath its neck took the chain and started whipping it around in a circle, stretching it out as far as possible, trying to keep it low towards the ground so it caught as much as it could, whipping it around and around and around in a circle, keeping the inertia going. It was still whacking on every single creature that it came across. He kept it about 2 feet off the ground, which meant it would hit anything. If it hit any of those bug creatures, it would snap their carapace and they would bust open. If it hit any of those badger crocs, immediately they'd be knocked on the ground and usually either unconscious or squeal in pain. As soon as there was one that was injured, the rest of the creatures, obviously being starved for this event, lunged on it and started ripping it to pieces, and then they would fight each other over the scraps. We all looked at each other like, what the hell, man? The crowd was going nuts. And as we saw that the women, even though they were holding their own a little bit, were in trouble, that is when our protective instinct kicked into gear. And we charged towards each of these different animals. There was a couple of those octopus-looking people that seemed to glide. They turned out to be a little more vicious as they would whack at you with those tentacles. The thing is, once you realize that was their main way of fighting, it wasn't hard to grab a hold of them and yank the sucker down to your level and use a quick kick to its face to break its neck. These things were a lot lighter and a lot, well, fragile compared to what we thought. Originally, we thought it was just some sort of tender, talking, tentacle twat, but instead they tended to be very, very vicious as well. There was also some sort of almost primate similar to us, but what really shocked us was several other humanoids came out, many of which clearly did not want to fight. However, they all held weapons. Weapons that we had seen inside each of the holding areas. These were clubs, blades, swords, it didn't matter. We all looked at them and we all started screaming basically the same thing to each other. If they don't want to fight, don't kill them. I went over to one of these things. It looked at me and it was scared to death. This thing was almost a grayish blue. I'd guess about 5'10". Not really human eyes, more reptilian in eyes, but more human face and features than I would care to admit. It was clearly scared out of its mind as I walked up towards it. It looked me up and down and then tried to point an axe at me. I'm like, there's no spearhead on that axe. What did it intend to do? And it started to shake. I simply reached out, grabbed the head of the axe, shook my head no, pushed the axe back slowly, and then walked away. The crowd did not like the fact that we were taking pity on those that did not want to fight, but we were more than willing to take out those that wanted us dead. The crowd was still in a frenzy as the fighting eventually faded down, and the last of the creatures that wanted to fight fell. The bull bug thing had long since been killed by the others, and the bodies of all the other creatures that were used as fodder were all over the place, mostly in pieces. But those that were not interested in fighting and seemed to be extremely emaciated, but held themselves back, tried to protect themselves, we didn't hurt them. And the crowd started chanting in their own language a version of kill, kill, kill. And I still remember the rest of us chanting back, fuck you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, what a turn of events it was. If you voted that only 3 humans would die, congratulations, you are the winner of today's contest. Come back in 48 hours for the next round of the gladiatorial games. And the crowd was absolutely ecstatic with boos as they were pissed off that they did not get to see a whole bunch of humans get eviscerated. I looked over and sure enough, 2 of ours were on the ground completely torn open. It was clear they were done. One of them, I could see the back of his head had been cracked open by I have no idea what, because I didn't see what happened. The other one was missing an arm and a leg and probably had bled out. The last one was still twitching a little bit, and we went over to see if there's anything we could do. I tried to tie a tourniquet around their arm, but it was a bit too late. They had lost too much blood from all the lacerations. And I looked at him. He was just a skinny little guy, too. I tried to look him in the eyes, but I had to look away. He looked down, too, and laughed. Well, at least I took a few of those bastards with me. I'll see you on the other side, brother. And with that, he was done. We all carried our dead and our wounded back. The crowds seemed surprised at this, as we would take so much care of those that were already gone. But we ended up laying them down inside one of the holding areas, placing a cloth over their face that is the best respect we could have for them at this point. Eventually, they sent guards in, but this time the guards were in heavy combat gear. And this time, instead of using those tickle sticks that they were using before, they were using actual spears. Apparently, they didn't use these because they didn't want to hurt us before, damage us too much. But eventually, they got us corralled in different areas and got us separated back into our groups. I saw the so-called mistress. Well, humans, you have proven yourselves to be very worth the time and money I spent on you. Now, you should rest for now, as you will be going back in later. But first, a gift for all you have done. We looked over, and food, at least the approximation of it, was being brought to us. We looked it over, we smelled at it. Thankfully, there was actually some protein in there, but we didn't care. At this point, we were all so goddamn hungry it didn't matter. We tore into everything. Yes, enjoy yourselves, for later on you will make me even more money. And with that lizard bitch walked away. We did not want anything to do with her, but at this point, the only thing we cared about was filling our guts. We had just watched a few of those we thought we knew spill their guts everywhere. And it wouldn't be much better. Eventually, in the holding area, I got another surprise. The doors opened, and they led us out to different areas. I was surprised when they brought me to a room that was very clean. Very, very clean. And I was instructed to wait. And when the doors opened a few minutes later, I received one hell of a shock.